I would like to call this regular meeting of the Loveland Board of Education to order at 6 p.m. and ask our treasurer, Mr. Giuffre, for a roll call.
Mr. Doherty.
Here.
Reverend Eiler.
Here.
Dr. Lorenz.
Here.
Dr. Rationale.
Here.
Mrs. Washburn.
Present. All present. You will note whether you are here in the room or whether you are joining us online, that Mr. Doherty is participating in this meeting virtually. The other board members are present here, and we're happy to have our student representatives with us this evening. And so the first item on our agenda would be to adopt the agenda. So we need a motion to adopt the agenda for March 22nd.
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Reverend Eiler, second. Any questions or discussion? I believe that there was an item added. It is in board docs. Am I correct? And it is on the paper copy that you have on your desk. It was a field trip was added to the agenda since you originally saw it.
Correct.
Any questions or discussion? Can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Reverend Eiler.
Yes.
Mr. Doherty.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes,
Schwetzner.
Yes.
motion carried. I'd like to welcome all of our guests here this evening. As I mentioned before, those here in the audience, some of them are presenting, so they will be introduced soon. Some of you who are joining us online, we appreciate having you. We're glad you're here for our meeting. And I'd ask you to rise now and join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. After the pledge, the next item on the agenda is hearing of the public. I will simply make a note that we have not received any communication in the past couple of weeks, as I usually report, whether we have or not. But I do believe that we have one member of the public signed in to speak this evening. Mr. Giuffre. Mr. Pauly, need to come up here to the microphone.
And Mr. Pauly had a handout that haven't. Mr. Doherty, I sent it to you. I don't know if you were able to receive it.
I do have it. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
I am here tonight to address one of the most important issues there is around education, and that is CRT. And so I hope you will listen to my presentation and my request at the end. And I'm going to read it off my piece of paper so that if there's any miscommunications or information following this, I can easily address that. So please put up with me while I boringly read this off the paper. I'm here today to address CRT. Now, the school employees and the school boards will tell you that we're not teaching it in our schools. And it's true, there is no CRT 101. However, it is interwoven within SEL and dispensed in many ways. So it is CRT. It labels one colored group of people as oppressors and another colored group of people as the oppressed. How horrible is this for our kids? It scars them for life once this happens. It causes hatred and anger and causes trouble. I saw a news video of a black fellow named Derek Wilburn from August 22nd, 2021, telling a Colorado school board that racism in America would be dead by today if it were not for certain people and institutions keeping it on life support. Sadly, one of those institutions is the American education system. He asked the school board to ban CRT. That night, the school board indeed voted 3-2 to ban CRT. Now, CRT may not be happening in Loveland, or it may, but in the interest of saving even one child from suffering permanent damage, I will try tonight to prevent it from happening here in Loveland. If it is happening, you can report that to a group called Protect Ohio's Children on nets. So, in school, a teacher tells a little kid that he and his family are racist and own slaves. and that they've been holding another boy's family down since the founding of this country, that they owe the little kid and his family. They tell another kid that the other kid's family owns slaves, and that likely his relatives have kept his family down since the founding of the country. Now the two kids are scarred for life. Two friends who played ball at recess every day are likely no longer to be friends. And great hate and anger could appear. How does that end up? There is news from Florida in an article in the dailywire.com from March the 11th, 2022, that a gang of blacks had beaten up 4 little boys in Coconut Creek, Florida schools. When captured, they said it was because the 4 little boys' families of what they did in 1700s or slavery. Some of the assaulted boys may not ever be able to go back to school again or even walk. Nobody involved will ever be the same because of the hate and the trauma that was instilled in some and the assault on the others. Please do not let Loveland schools get to this point. Please keep our school safe. As for you parents, it may not be happening in Loveland, but remember, what goes around comes around. You may move. You may have kids and grandkids in other such schools. So as a co-owner, I prefer not to be called a stakeholder, but a co-owner like all of you taxpayers. I ask that the school board votes to forbid all mention of race in any way in our classrooms and let the embers of racism die here in Loveland tonight. It's simply not enough to say you will ban CRT. I'm asking you to ban all race talk by all staff members. I never heard it mentioned once in my 11 years in school here in Loveland. There's no need for that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pauly. That was the only person who asked to address the board.
Only one, yes.
All right. All right, seeing no questions, I will move on to ask for a motion to approve the February 15th regular meeting and the March 1st work session Board of Education minutes.
So moved.
I heard Mr. Doherty move. Is there a second?
Second.
And Mrs. Washburn seconded. Any questions, corrections, amendments to the minutes? All right, Mr. Frey, can we vote on that?
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Adler,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Rationale.
Yes.
motion carried. And as usual, those minutes will be posted on board docs, including the links to the videos for those. Now moving along, we move to, sure that I am right thing here. We're moving into presentations and it looks like Mrs. Connor is ready to get us started. Is that correct, Mr. Broadwater? We're turning it over to Mrs. Connor. All right, we have a couple of presentations, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to introduce 2 groups of our educators who are here to talk about 2 piloting programs that they have been involved in this school year. And they're at the time of the year in the spring where we bring those forward for adoption if that piloting process goes appropriately. What you will find are we have some amazing educators that can answer some of your questions. I just want to let everybody at home know that both of those presentations are linked into board docs for their reference. Those of you here in the audience, that will be projected and the teachers will have an opportunity to present that information in person here. Also, I just want the board to know that 5.1 and 5.2 document linked into that. So after we start with the being a reader resource adoption, the ELA, they're going to speak first, and then we will go to the math, and then I will follow up just with a quick little explanation that, and that portion, when you get to that portion of the resolution, that I'll have a few little words to say at that time. Okay. So I first want to start with our ELA, our K through 2 team of teachers work through this. All year, we had Ms. Gehring and Mr. Fancher kind of help lead the charge. We've also had our LPS building coordinator, Tracy Stu, who's here this evening. And our two teachers that will be presenting are Jenny Kenny, who is a first grade teacher, and Shannon Knutson, who is a kindergarten teacher.
Welcome.
While we make the technology work. Well, yes, make the technology work. Good.
A good share. Trying to talk to John's technology. It's all good. Good job, John. Hello, so my name is Jenny Kenny and I am a first grade teacher at Loveland Primary School. And we are going to start with a rationale. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Our rationale for adopting a reading curriculum K2. So we want to start by saying that teaching reading is a very complex process. It is not something that happens naturally, such as learning to talk or learning to walk. There are certain pathways that must be followed to teach children to read. So this is a visual metaphor of how children learn to read that was developed by Dr. Hollis Scarborough in 2001. And it's based on a meta-analysis of research. She was a researcher in early literacy and language. And it's also based off of the simple view of reading. So the idea is that we, as humans, need to master all of these individual strands within this reading rope to become skilled readers. And so what we want is to read, we want to be able to comprehend. That's if you can't comprehend, then we haven't learned to read. So there are upper and lower strands of the rope. On the upper strands, there's what we call language comprehension. It encompasses background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. And as students learn to master each of these strands and become increasingly strategic in using these strands, they weave together and become part of the reading rope. On the lower strands, we have word recognition. And so that includes phonological awareness, which is being able to hear sounds, hear syllables in words, and then decoding or phonics, which is where we are taking those sounds and matching them to letters. And then also sight word recognition. As we have learned to decode words, many words become high frequency words. As soon as we see them, we absolutely recognize them. We don't need to decode them. And so at the bottom where it says LC times D equals RC, you need language comprehension and decoding in order to learn to comprehend in reading. And if either of those is missing or frayed, then the product would be 0. So if you think of it as a mathematical equation, 1 times 1 equals 1. So if I am able to, for instance, pick up a medical journal and using the phonics knowledge that I have, I can work my way through it. I can probably read all of the words in the medical journal. However, what I'm missing are the parts of the top rope. I don't have the background knowledge and I don't have the vocabulary. I don't understand most of the words that I can indeed read. Therefore, I would have 0 language comprehension times 1, my decoding equals 0. So I would not be able to comprehend what I was reading. Conversely, you may have some students who have a wonderful background knowledge and a robust vocabulary. However, they have difficulty decoding the actual words on the text. Therefore, they're not going to be proficient readers because they are missing the decoding piece. So all of these things together, they need to work. They need to be developed independently and to work together and woven into this reading rope, if you will, to become skilled and proficient readers.
Fantastic. And so this all is part of what being a reader in collaborative classroom or head company for being a reader. It aligns with the science of reading, and that Scarborough's rope would be that science of reading. It also supports dyslexia legislation that came out in 2001 in April, and there are some additional components that'll be rolling out in the next few years. And this is helping us to kind of get ahead of some of those expectations. It also, we have our writing program Being a Writer, which is through that same company, being a collaborative classroom. So being a reader is very intertwined, meshes well, works well with that. So again, looking at the National Reading Panel, which was also published in 2001, there's those 5 big ideas, and being a reader has very thoughtfully ingrained all of those components to help our students grow as readers. And I can speak from my piloting experience that I'm noticing a lot of growth with my students, their confidence with decoding text and the text that they're able to read. It's quite exciting, and they're very excited to show off their skills too. And just with early academic skills in literacy and mathematics being such important predictors for later academic achievement, this is a really critical thing that we're looking at their reading and making sure it aligns with that science. And it also incorporates explicit systematic phonics instruction, which is critical to later reading success. This is just an infographic from Collaborative Classroom that shows how they roll out the different instructional practices across grade levels. So if anyone is really curious to dive into that, you are welcome to explore. So with our piloting process, we had 29 teachers who piloted this year, the entire kindergarten team, 9 first grade teachers and 9 second grade teachers.
And we were very fortunate that all of our piloting materials were purchased through grant funds. So far there has been 0 cost to pilot. We said that, starting the year with uncertainty due to COVID and coming off of, wearing masks and being even part-time last year, it's a testament to the program to see this many teachers willing to step up and say, hey, I want to be part of this pilot program. We are continuing professional learning as a K-2 team to grow and to use evidence-based practices within the science of reading in our classroom.
So this is just a sample of how some of those instructional practices, 5 big ideas of reading, roll out. So weekly, we're doing whole group lessons every single day that are about 20 minutes in length. Students are practicing reading books at their own level, and some are just those interest texts too. They're practicing up to 4 days out of the week for 15 minutes each time. And then they're also exploring independent work while the teacher is leading small groups, which is where we're really rolling out that systematic phonics instruction, because research has shown that students learn best when it's differentiated to their specific needs, which this program does a really good job with. And it's then supported in a small group setting instead of whole group. So that's been a really positive shift. And with that small group, every student is meeting with the teacher at least times a week for 15 minutes. And some days it's even 20 minutes or more. So it's fantastic how intensive it is to support their learning. Additionally, as part of that, there's a comprehensive assessment plan that is how students are doing individually as readers, but getting to know the class as a whole so that the teacher can make informed decisions in how they are moving forward with lessons or supplementing with additional materials that are often suggested by being a reader. So for example, I had a student who was having a hard time picking up the decoding. The word wall words were really coming to them quickly, but when I would give them a word that they had to figure out on their own, that was a bit trickier. There were supplemental texts that were suggested for the reading group. So with that student and a few others who would benefit from that support, we were able to loop back to the same level of decodable text that would explore those same sounds and same words. And they were able to catch up with the group using materials that were already provided by her.
So the kits, They vary in the levels that each grade level has, but they all include high frequency word cards, a sound spelling chart. There are decodable readers for sets 1 through 5, which typically land in kindergarten and first grade. And those are readers which are based on the phonics skills that the students have learned so far. And there are also rich, authentic, high interest texts that we use daily in our whole group comprehension. So for those who aren't ready to decode those words yet, on that lower strand of the reading rope, if we go back to that, on the top level, we're able to bring in that language comprehension. We can read aloud those texts and have those rich conversations with texts that have a little more meat to them. And also embedded within the program, it will come with professional development. We'll have trainers from Collaborative Classroom. And then there's also on the website, there's a learning portal that has lots of professional development built in that teachers can access on their own time or in small groups without anyone from Collaborative Classroom being there.
And then we have this lovely video that Tracy Steubenrock put together that shows it in action.
Well, the volume's not working, but the second grade teacher here, she is teaching the students in something called guided spelling, which is part of the word study program, where she's instructing them to write the word zip. So they're breaking the word apart, z, I, p, and writing it down. And then she's going to instruct them to add the prefix un in front of the word. And then talk about what does un mean? How does a prefix change the meaning of the word? This is a small group in a kindergarten. So this is Jill Jones from kindergarten.
Segmenting and blending words. Here we have Mrs. Mayer, a first grade teacher, and she was also continuing to do some targeted, personalized small group work with blending and segmenting sounds. And then they were changing the beginning sounds to make new words using the ending part.
Do you remember what the words were in that? Because it was started with all, correct?
All, yes.
Remember what all the words were? Because
So-
I was not sure about the last word that they got.
Oh, stall.
Stall. I thought it was a
So then-
word that was a little
Yes.
unusual for
Yes.
that age kid. So,
We're doing all single sounds at the beginning, and then she threw in a blend, and it was perfect because they had a lot of connections, like a bathroom stall or.
okay. I didn't know if they were
Stall.
doing aviation or,
Yes.
playing with stalling or looking.
And then this was one of the second grade classrooms. This would be a sample whole group lesson. They were working on an informational unit, looking at nonfiction texts about the rainforest. So students were, they were writing down some questions that they had, and then as they listened to the text, they recorded facts that may be related to their questions, and then maybe produced more questions. So they were really working on the wondering.
And then she instructs the students, there's a lot of partner work that goes into this program. So we have writing partners and reading partners. They work together for the entire unit. So she instructs them, she says, now you're going to talk to your partner about what you were wondering. And she says, and then I really want you to listen to your partner, because at the end, you're going to share your partner's thinking. So one of the things they might talk about that supports the social emotional growth is, how will you be a good partner today? How will your partner know that you're listening to you? What will you do to show your partner that you hear what they're saying? And so they say things like, oh, we're going to take turns. We're going to maintain eye contact. We speak to one another. And then they share out what their partner said.
And that piece really supports just like our whole body listening, our social thinking lessons, because it really is teaching them how to communicate and collaborate with one another, to listen to their ideas, not just about our own, but sharing out what they hear from their partners. And then this is another first grade classroom, Mrs. Laurent. They were in small group again, but they were working on high frequency words. And you'll notice like they have words like wood, and they're using that multisensory approach to help them with learning. And then they ended with a decodable text that ties in with the phonics that they were working on.
To share forever.
Was the only slide left the question slide?
Yeah.
That,
Yep.
I thought that was.
So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer.
I'll go.
I'm just curious if you
Maybe that
know,
was it.
you talked about the small group and how many minutes they're getting. Do you know how that compares to the previous program or the, I guess, current non-piloted
Mhm.
program?
It's pretty much exactly the same. We've always met with our small groups for approximately, okay, and depending on whether that's 4 groups at 15 minutes or 3 groups at 20 minutes. And we just target it by who needs what most. And sometimes it depends on the level, but we can meet maybe for a shorter time face to face and then have those kids go out and work together or to read quotable text or to work on something that we've given them. But would you say that it's the same as our literacy by design that we've had?
Yeah.
I would say the biggest difference is probably the more personalized, differentiated phonics instruction.
Right.
It's more systematic, it's more tailored where students are ready to access to help them on that progression.
Mhm. And every 4 weeks, you do a mastery assessment to make sure that the students are making the progress in their small group. And if they're not, then there are reteaching lessons where you can go back and reteach. And then you can assess whether or not this is working or if we need to maybe try another approach. But so far, we've seen wonderful success.
And one of the big things is with sets 1 through 5, students have to master those concepts before they can move on to like fluency and comprehension.
Mr. Doherty.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, love the video. Thank you for doing that because it really helps to bring home what the learning experience looks like for the kids. That was really very interesting and very helpful. I wanted to make, I took note of the social emotional learning, the SEL, a comment in there. And sometimes I think that we don't explain that often or perhaps deeply enough to everyone. What does that mean? What does it encompass? And I know it's got innumerable dimensions to it, but you showed one there right now. And one of the things I talk to a lot of people about in the business world is the value of team skills. And here is a beautiful example where you're starting to teach team effectiveness at a very early age. And I can tell you that shows up much later in life and it really has a lot to do with an individual's effectiveness in the workplace. So I think that's great. And then maybe just for clarity, being a reader is actually a packaged program, as I understand it. So could you just comment on who the author, the provider of the program is, and how widely utilized they are in Ohio or across the country, whatever you happen to know about them?
Well, it's from Collaborative Classroom, which was developed 40 years ago. It used to be known as the Developmental Studies Institute. They are a small nonprofit. They have in Being a Reader, second edition just came out in June of 2021. So the second edition is fairly new. It is not as widespread as maybe some of the giant textbook companies because it is a nonprofit group. However, they have another component called SIPS, which is it's used for intervention and multi-system. It's a multi-sensory phonics program that is used widely across the country. But I would say that it's growing. It's growing in popularity, but
Mhm.
it is a smaller nonprofit.
It is becoming something that many more school districts in the Southwest Ohio region are looking at. Actually, when we first adopted being a writer, a Bellbrook school up in Dayton, a suburb of Dayton, was using it, and we went and observed before officially piloting it. We know that Deer Park and a couple other school districts have actually come, and we've done some collaborations through Hamilton County Educational Service Center to come observe it in action. And
The curriculum director from Springboro Schools
Yes.
came just recently to observe in my classroom.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe, Andrea, you'll have sort of the detailed information about just how the adoption works
Yes,
for Loveland and the
yes, absolutely.
cost. So, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Without making you guys dive into the cost of it, what was the drive to switch to a new program and pilot a new program now? And what do you see as the superiority of this program over what you've been doing?
Well, how long had it been since our last, it had been quite a while since our last literacy adoption. So our materials had been, it had been somewhat outdated. And so the reason that we wanted to go with this is that because we had already done all of the legwork for being a writer, the being a reader program follows, it's seamless. It like the format of it is exactly like being a writer. So it's going to require much less, I don't know, like even training for the teachers, because when you open up the manual and look at it, it is set up exactly like being a writer. And we've had so much professional development with that program that it just felt very seamless. Also, it's very user-friendly, and we really liked the text that they had and felt that it encompassed everything that we needed to encompass the science of reading. And Ohio had put out the Ohio Plan to Lift Literacy,
Yes.
or the Literacy Achievement Plan. It was in 2020, and it said that all of our reading materials need to be based in the science of reading. And so Collaborative Classroom has really done the legwork to make sure that this is in compliance with that.
The only other thing I would say, Eric, for our building.
Need to be
can't
by
hear
the
you. You have to be on
microphone.
the-
Sorry.
Well, I was going to let Jenny talk. I was just going to say, hey, why don't you talk about this? So the only thing I would say for our building is when you ask for this program compared to last program, we are sorely missing a systematic approach to phonics instruction. So that's one of the things that being like Literacy by Design was great. It brought a whole group component to it. It brought small group instruction, and it bridged the two. And it's worked well for well over a decade, but it never really had a great writing component or a phonics. So you guys can speak to that, but the systematic phonics approach, especially in sets 1 to 5, is really what we're super excited about. Because there's LBD require teachers to really use their teacher brain in a good way to say what are those teachable moments. But if the teachable moment never came up, then there's, that phonics instruction is not guaranteed to happen. Where in this being a reader set, it lays it out perfectly for the teachers, and it guarantees that our kids are going to get those phonics skills early on.
Phonics instruction seems invaluable after kids missing so much direct instruction.
The instruction it's systematic and explicit. So it is like, you cannot do B if you do not do A first. So you have to follow it. And it's also multi-sensory. And so that's what all the research says that kids need.
The only comment I would make is, first of all, thank you for presenting. I was able to stop in at Jill Jones's classroom over at LECC, and the kids were rocking with it and they were engaged. And Jill had let me know that she was going to be presenting with some other teachers to other districts. I think it was the following day. And I think that's indicative of how well the program's been received. And I think to Mrs. Washburn's point with COVID, we are worried about reading scores and how kids are doing with reading. So, but I appreciate you guys presenting this evening.
Thank you.
Appreciate the coordination.
Accidental.
So I'm going to basically just kind of transition over here to 5th grade math. So we had been using investigations, basically kindergarten through 8th grade. And I'm not sure, I'm trying to remember who was on the board. I actually think maybe most of you were on the board in spring of 2020, we were all in our basements trying to figure out how to do virtual board meetings. And we adopted, at the time it was Pearson, Envision Math 6 through 8. Well, we still had our fifth grade sitting here with, still being located at LIS and trying to kind of figure out that in between. So Investigations is up for renewal this year. And I had last spring, Leslie Papa, who you're going to meet here in just a moment, come to me and say, what's the possibility we can kind of take a look at this, at what 6 through 8's doing, and just kind of do a pilot to see. And I said, well, actually, when a program's up for perfect time to kind of take a look and evaluate if it's time to make a switch and what you're noticing. So just for the audience at home, there is a short presentation linked into Board Docs as I transition to the next group. So these are fifth grade teachers, Leslie Papa and Melanie Sowers.
Good evening. Thanks for letting us do this presentation this evening. Connor kind of approached this as fifth grade has always been off on its own. We've always been lumped 3 through 5 for math, but we're in a building with 6 through 8. So we've always kind of been our own thing. And when they got rid of digits for 6th through 8th grade and they switched to Envisions. Actually, a former 6th grade math teacher asked me, did you realize that there's now a component? So Envisions actually goes much younger. And so we really jumped on board with this. When I brought it to Andrew's attention and got a hold of people, we actually got teacher manuals for all of our teachers, 5th grade teachers, which there were 5 math teachers this last year, and all of our intervention specialists, which Melanie is one of the 3 of those that we have. So everybody was all in this. We've always had supplemental programs. It was 10 marks for years, and then 10 marks went away, and then we tried Redbird. We can get rid of that now with the new Envisions program simply because all of it's included. There is massive amounts of differentiation, both going to our strugglers, to our really high kids that we need to push. There's all kinds of STEM projects, and it really covers the board, so we're not having to search for material anymore. Would you like to add anything? I'm going to pull a Jenny here. I can't get it. Oh, there it goes. All right, so for the teachers, it works out really nice with 5 of us teaching. Next year, I believe there'll be 6 of us teaching and our intervention specialists. We all get together, we collaborate, we're all on the same page. We all know what's going on. This past year, Mrs. Young and myself went full blown, completely Envisions, with the others having the teacher manuals and us being able to say, hey, when you get to this unit, this is a great piece. This is a great reteaching piece, or this is really good at pushing your kids. So we've all been doing it, but her and I were the ones that really, we those assessments, we've used all the materials that they gave us for that. It is very easy for us to, I always struggled with Investigations was never a digital program. It was very much a hands-on, which was great. But when my students got to 6th grade, they were online on a digits program or Envisions program that was so reading heavy and so rigorous that our 5th graders kind of got blindsided. And what Pearson has done with the 5th grade program is they've taken it and they've, like, my little 5th graders come in with the Investigations, they still get to have the manipulatives, they still have that piece, but there's also that online component. So I can mix it up. What I was adamant not to happen was to have my little 5th grader all day long trying to do math. I'm very much against that, but the way that 5th grade Envisions works, I can do both. There's a workbook that has full instructions in it, all kinds of stuff that the students do on their own. There's a lot of thinking. We always start with a solve and share where we just throw a problem out and see what the kids, what they know. And then the lesson always follows that. It's great just because it's very routine and the kids know exactly what to expect. There's a solve and share. For my regular kids, there's a video that reteaches what I just taught so that they hear it at least twice for understanding. And then they get that practice. There's workbook practice, there's online practice. There's built-in quick checks where it's just a 5-point, really quick. Did they get it? Did they not get it? We get so much feedback from the program that it's very easy for me to set up my small groups before moving on to the next. And I can keep track of, okay, I need these. I do have an intervention specialist in my room where I'll say, okay, you get these guys. So we're always switching up which ones need the help. And it's so fast for me, not having to sit there and grade everything to figure out where to put people, that I've really appreciated that. The other thing I mentioned up there as far as intervention is all of the extension stuff that's one of the big math words was 3-act tasks, which none of you have probably ever heard, but it's kind of a way to introduce a problem to the kid without giving them the question to begin with. And Envisions actually took it and built it into the program. So rather than me going off search for some of the enrichment tasks, I do a math journal in my classroom. They're already there, and I just pull them up and I can work on them with the kids. And it's always whatever topic we're dealing with at the time, it's very applicable to that topic. I'll let you talk about your.
Well, so I think, as Leslie's saying, there is a lot to pull from. So as the intervention specialist and a co-teacher, so there's, 3 different co-teaching teams. There are several things we can pull from to meet all the kids' needs. So whether we have, in one class, we have kids that are doing extension activities because that's where they, did a quick check and that's where it shot them. Or we have kids that are doing intervention activities that we have a whole, I printed out for Andrea and it'll be down in the board office with the stuff. That's all online, but we can pull all different lessons based on their progress. So we're meeting kids' individual needs with so much more at our hands than the last program ever had. So that right there is phenomenal. And kids are enjoying it. They're individually like, oh, I did this quick check and now, oh, I'm doing enrichment, or I'm doing the practice buddy, I think we call it. And they're just constantly like, kind of like Leslie said, they're constantly like engaged, moving forward, and we're meeting them where they are. And it's been very exciting. And I've been in 2, kind of like half in one class and then full with Mrs. Young. So I've been able to, pilot the different parts with several different kids. So it's been really, it's just wonderful. I think one of the big things we also talked about was that the workbook. Well, actually, our next slide is practice, right?
Next slide is, yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing go ahead. I'll come back to mine.
No, you go.
That one's you.
Okay, this slide. Okay, so this just kind of shows a lot of the way that the lessons are, that we can pull different things. So that's starting with that problem and talking. That was a big piece that we felt like in our math team. We're not getting the kids talking about the problems. We're just telling them, like, we wanted them to be like, this is how I would solve it, or this is how I would solve it, and get those math brains and having them talk to each other. Like, well, I think it would be solved this way. And we say, how does your math brain work? Like, your math brain is different than theirs. So that beginning piece of every lesson is wonderful. It's a lot of conversation, notebook, thinking, and that's what we want to see them doing. And then the visual learning also is there. And sometimes that can come later on too. This is super hard to say. But then after we introduce a lesson, or we call it mini lessons or whatever, problem solving learning, we go into that practice piece, and that's more individualized. So sometimes we'll do a quick check or some adaptive practice, and a lot of it is online. There's also printout pieces. So I just love all the resources that we have that can really hit individual needs, and we're seeing lots of growth. And it's more challenging, like Leslie said, like there's a lot of reading with it, but since we're exposing them to it throughout the lessons and throughout the topic, they're like, by the time they get to the end, they're like, oh yeah, I remember doing a problem. Like, what do I know? What do I need to find out? Like those problem solving skills. So, and I'm excited. We love it.
When you look at that slide, the things with the green around it are work pages. So they're actually what the kids have in their hands. And anything with that black across the top or the blue to the right is all of the digital piece. So that they can actually They can manipulate their, what am I trying to say? They have touch screens, sorry.
Yeah.
They have touch screens on their computer, so they're doing a lot of what you see.
So they could come run our meeting, right?
Yes, and they would be way better at it than any of us. So I just took this and I kind of made it a timeline. So I kind of approached about having the new 5th grade program. We had teacher training last spring with all of us. And then took the decision, okay, 2 of us will fully implement. So we've been doing it since the beginning of the year. We meet at least twice a month as a content team and discuss and make comments, ask questions, share, just so that everybody had a vote on the program, approve or disapprove, and everybody was very supportive of it. We compared it to how we go through the topics or what our standards are now as far as a map, and the new program is slightly different. However, having taught it this year, it makes so much sense. I spent the first half of the year more time just on number sense than I ever had. Number sense meaning place value, decimals, just understanding multiplying and dividing by tens, just some of the skills that these guys are going to use for a very long time. That has really shown up once we hit fractions and once we hit volume. It was impressive. Students very much like the program. They like the online piece. It gives them automatic feedback if they miss a question. There's a help button. There's also a button that will show them how to solve it and then change the numbers and let them solve it. So rather than waiting for me to go through and check workbook pages or whatever, they're getting instant feedback, and it will show them how to do it correctly so that they can actually read through it and figure it out on their own. Teachers definitely liked it. And then the last step is being here with all of you. I think the thing I was going to mention on the slide, but I hit the button by accident, was 5th grade, well, math in general gets a lot of question marks from home about, well, how do you teach division? And wait, how are they multiplying? Because it's not the way that I learned to multiply, or a lot of the parents learn to multiply. This program, because the kids, it's online, there is a ton of parent help. They can watch the videos that show how I taught it that day. So it's not the parent and the child, but my teacher said, do it this way. And they can pull it up and go, look, this is what she said today in class. So it's helped a lot that way as well.
Did I understand you to say that there was some collaboration and there was some help when you were in particular issues that you shared with other teachers who weren't piloting the program? The only reason I raised that issue is it probably will not be quite so easy then to compare how these 2 groups of students did compared to other students, because you did share some kinds of information. In other words, not just leave the other groups behind and say, well, we're doing it this way, too bad for you. So all of the groups benefited from the pilot in a way. I think you said,
And
shared some concepts.
we were sharing more like kind of what parts we were liking. And we said towards the end of the year, we share even more, but I
Okay.
don't, not many of the other teachers that didn't pilot really implemented pieces.
Yeah,
So
the teachers that didn't pilot did
Yeah.
not have the workbooks, and the
Yeah.
kids didn't have the digital access.
So then you could do some sort of high level comparing of how, what student progress was in the 2 different groups.
And I would love to do that because
Mhm.
having done both, I would think that my kids this year are at such an advantage next year. I would think the 6th grade teachers will be able to figure out, just because they've gotten the reading part and the rigor part that the other
They've built
students haven't.
math stamina. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? I see Mr. Doherty raising his hand, so I'll get him first so I don't forget him off there on the screen.
Kevin,
I think
up.
you're muted still.
Sorry about that. Yeah, maybe just a couple of quick comments. One is that your presentation caused me to think about our business advisory council not too long ago was really highlighting the needs for math skills in our graduates when they get to the workplace. So it's great to see evolution in the way we teach this critical set of skills to our kids. So thank you for continuing to grow the way we do this. And then I might just connect a couple of dots to some other things that we have, I think, a bit later in the agenda. One has to do with the purchase of Chromebooks. Another one has to do with a technology leader for the district. And it's just, again, reflection that the way we teach has changed over the years, and there is much more digital integration in today's world than might have been the case 5 or 10 years ago. And hence, some of the reason that we're focusing on some of these technology investments that we've been talking about a little bit prior to tonight, and I think we're going to be talking about in some subsequent bullet points in the agenda. If I'm wrong about that, please point it out, but I think I'm in generally the right direction on those two dots.
Thanks, Kevin. Any questions here at the board table or discussion?
Turn my microphone on too, so I'm not on mute. One thing I would just like to say in listening to both presentations, how much I appreciate your commitment to student outcomes. And it's fun to see you light up having these new tools at your disposal and being able to see improved outcomes for your students. And it's just a reminder of the importance of that work that we do is to equip you with those resources that you need to see outcomes we all want to see for our kids. So thank you for piloting these programs and being so excited and dedicated.
I would add, thank you for, I love to hear teachers presenting about the kids, and I love seeing kids and what we're doing, because that's why we're here. And I like to see smiles when you're presenting, because it means you enjoy what you're doing, and that's what we like. As a former math teacher, I know how hard it is to keep kids. If you're teaching them all at the same rate, it's pretty difficult. So I like the personalized aspect of being able to adjust to where kids' abilities are, because we know kids grow differently and pace differently. But thank you for presenting. I appreciate it very much.
I think you can see why we bring the teacher to talk about it, because they get excited. They've been doing the work the entire year. I think it's also important to note with both groups, they talked a little bit about, this is something we talked about this time last year. This isn't, oh, we show up in August and magically what we're going to do. These are conversations and kind of the ebb and flow of school improvement is always looking for what are those things to continue and grow the tools that are best to grow our students. I wanted to point out a couple things. So both resources are housed, as this is per board policy. So anytime the board adopts a new program, those are housed in the board office for 30 days. So both programs are already set up down there, ready to go. So if someone would want to come preview them or look at all they have to do is reach out, and we'll set up a time for them to come in and preview all those materials. It's been fun because I find myself as I walk past that being a reader table, getting caught with chicka chicka boom boom and doing all kinds of I remember reading that to my kids and how that's still their favorite book from when they're young, and all those really cool things. So it's been fun to kind of look through that. And I've noticed that I am not the only one in the board office that stops by that table and looks at those. So that's a testimony to early literacy and what those early books bring people and the memories that brings back. I also wanted to call out that there are, and you'll get to this when you're voting for 5.1 and 5.2, there's a document locked in or linked into both of those. It's the same document, and I just had Julie Dunn downstairs do that for us so that you could see it's both the same thing. I put the information, both information on the cost of the math resource adoption, that's one grade level, and also the cost for the being a reader. With being a reader, as the teachers mentioned, that was the original piloting materials were purchased with grant funds. So we will not need to purchase that piece of it. So really that purchase price is for the additional kits for the teachers that didn't pilot it, any additional pieces that we have to kind of supplement to pull in. But all that information's there. There is also a set of 3 bullet points on the notes. The teachers did reference the Ohio dyslexia law. This is something that school districts right now across the state are watching. I know Jesse Coles, every time he and I go to different meetings together, that is always the topic of conversation. So it's one of those mandates that the Ohio Department of Education gives us, but doesn't give us a lot of guidance, but says, hey, you're going to do this next fall. So it's March, and we're still trying to figure out what that's going to look like. What we do know is that exactly what Jenny and Shannon were speaking about with the multisensory piece is a huge component of that. And as that was coming out at the same time we started looking at piloting, we felt like this was a pretty safe bet to help us get in front of that. So when that law and that handbook finally comes out, we're in a good spot. So we felt like perhaps we were maybe helping our staff be a little proactive with that. So I wanted to just to call out that there are notes linked in there as well, and just to let the board know that when you get to that piece, that information is linked in there. Any questions for me at this point, or?
I think we're good at the moment. We may have questions when we get to 5.1 and 5.2.
Awesome.
Thank you all for being here. Thanks for bringing the kids in with the video and the kids in with, how much they like the math. So that was good to know about the students. We do have quite a few items on the agenda tonight, so we will not be offended if you need to go home and work on tomorrow's lessons. You're welcome to stay. We would be happy to have you stay, but there is no problem if you do decide that you need to leave at this time. We'll just keep on working. So
Thanks.
thank you very much. All right, those are our presentations. We'll move on to the report section of the meeting. First, you have the administrator reports. Those are attachments in board docs. There's quite a bit of information, particularly in the business manager board report, which we will be able to reference when we get to the business manager items. Unless there is any concern about any of those reports, some of them will be referenced in the as well. I will quickly take care of my board president report, if that's all right. So I have a couple of items. I do not have a slideshow. Have to put anything up. Hopefully it will be clear. I do have a couple of hard copy things to hand out. First thing on my report is we are still working on the annual calendar for the board. We've talked about that a little bit. It's not ready for prime time yet. Still working on trying to get the idea is that we would have a standard calendar so that board members would know these are the items that need to come up in January. These are the ones that need to come up in February. We're close. And so probably that will be coming for discussion in the April meeting. I would ask board members to, if you just have any ideas in your head, anything that you think should be included in that calendar, just thoughts, shoot them to me in an email and I'll make sure that they're included in that calendar. I will also let you know that in the April meeting, we will be talking about summer positions. We are working on, Mrs. Connor's not here right now, but they are hard at work already talking about the summer program that will be similar to last summer's program, but expanded. The program that we'll be using, I believe it's ESSER money, but it might be some other name for the money now. But it's mandated, but it's also something that the district wants to do to make sure that keep our kids moving forward. So those summer, just so you're prepared, that summer information will come as we're getting ready for summer. Speaking of calendar and summer, I would ask the board, there's a little bit of a problem with our June schedule. And I believe Mr. Broadwater will not be able to be here on the 28th. We're trying to move the meeting. And the date that we've kind of determined that it can be moved to is June 14th. Slight problem with that. I will not be able to attend that meeting. So I'm asking at this point if the board would consider two things. I'm wondering if you would consider a special meeting on Monday, June 6th. It would be a short meeting. It would be to see what has come out of the strategic vision planning and to go ahead and give the okay to that. I believe there would be a gallery walk, public viewing of that on June 8th.
We're still looking at if the board meeting is able to be moved to the 6th, we may just do it in conjunction with that as we look at it.
Doing
The same evening.
the same evening with the gallery walk?
Yes.
Okay. So, but that then the June 14th would be a regular
Correct.
meeting. There may be some hiring things that need to be taken care of. And I'm waiting to see Mr. Doherty nod his head. Mr. Doherty would be then in charge of that meeting if I'm not able to be here. So I'm asking the board to look at their calendars and see if they are available for a relatively short one item meeting on June 6th. That's a Monday. And then the regular board business meeting on June 14th.
Kathy, 6 and 14 are both okay with me.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else?
Works.
I see a nod. I don't hear a nod from Reverend Eilert. Dr. Swetchnow still looking at his calendar?
I can definitely do the 14th, the 6th. No question.
Okay,
We're out of town and coming back late on the.
late on the 5th. Okay, and it would be you would be able to participate, I believe, virtually, if that would be a help that evening to see the presentation. Mrs. Washburn,
I'm available.
available. So is it all right if we go ahead with those plans? We would do the appropriate notifications for those. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So they would both be at.
I'm assuming, well, definitely the 14th would be at 6.
Right.
I'm assuming the 6th, that we could be a little bit more flexible with that since it's a special meeting. If it would help that it's at 7 instead of 6,
No,
or
it doesn't
Okay.
make any.
I would say then do both at 6.
Okay.
If that's all right. Okay, just a report on the Planning Commission. This is to open some discussion on that. We've talked a little bit about it. It is my sense that I am thinking that we are, after conversation with board members here at the last meeting, that we are thinking that the board would provide no tasks for the Planning Commission until after the completion of the strategic vision process. Not that Planning Commission members who are part of the strategic vision process can't take part in that, but there would be no tasks assigned to what is currently the Planning Commission. I personally would assume then that there would be no meetings of the Planning Commission in that interim, since there are no tasks for them to work on. And that the board would state that by August 2022, the board would come to terms with the format of the Planning Commission, with the membership in the Planning Commission, confirming the membership of those who are still on it or anyone who has resigned and terms need to be re-upped, and tasks. So that what I just stated is sort of the beginning of discussion. No board tasks for the Planning Commission, most likely no meetings, and then that the board would plan to confirm format of the commission, membership of the commission, and tasks no later than August 2022. Questions, comments, other plans?
At our work session, I believe somebody, maybe Eric, I might be wrong. So they were going to also speak with Donnell.
Right, and that's Kathy's summary is kind of a summary that also I have the understanding of speaking with Donnell that he was on board with that for a plan.
Okay.
We don't have the ability to suspend them to say, okay, you're suspended for now. We do have the ability not to assign them more tasks or work, and they don't have, to my knowledge, anything that they're still working on as far as a formal process. And then the idea was to let the strategic vision concept play out, then to see if the Planning Commission has an ongoing role or not, or if there's some other role for the members that are in that commission. But yes, I did speak with them.
Thanks.
And just to clarify, if there was a need for a meeting, such as to determine who's still a member, whose terms are what, those kinds of things, that would be a public announced meeting, just as they have been doing to this point. So,
Correct.
I think it's a good plan. I think it's a good timeline, gives us plenty of time from completion of the plan in order to then think thoughtfully about what the best way is to engage the Planning Commission.
And I think to go back on that, the Planning Commission's done an inordinate amount of work that's been very helpful for us since they were brought into being. And with the process that's currently going on, it didn't feel right to start to give guidance on another project without knowing what level of importance that would have afterward.
All right. Well, I will ask that Dr. Swetchnow, you convey to Donnell, for those who didn't hear, Donnell is a current chair of the Planning Commission, so that you would convey to him that we had this discussion at our meeting. I have two more items. The next to the last item is, in case you didn't know, it did make some social media kinds of comments. I did speak to the Planning and Zoning Commission last week. And so I have provided you with a copy of the statement that I made. The statement is also available. The city records that meeting. So if you go to the website, you can see the statement and all the other statements that were made. This was a meeting to discuss for planning and zoning the special planning district for the Grailville property, the Drees proposal that there be 209 homes on that property. And so I won't read this statement. I won't enter it into school board minutes because it is a statement that was made to planning and zoning. I simply made clear at the meeting that I did not have a resolution or I did not have direction from the school board as a whole. I was speaking as both a citizen. The property where I live backs up to the one piece of this development that is proposed. And I spoke as a individual school board member, letting the Planning and Zoning Commission know that there was not a resolution from the board. But I expressed my hope at the end of my speech that we ask the commission to consider any impact to the school district, along with their normal attention to the impact on the city of Loveland and the accuracy and the validity of the zoning change request. Several people did speak about how the development might affect the school district, numbers of students, numbers of tax dollars, need for facilities. There was a lot of discussion about traffic. There was a lot of discussion about quality of life, green space, et cetera. Again, all of this material is available in the planning and zoning minutes video that's on the Loveland website. What they did, they could have voted on this. If they vote on this, what the Planning and Zoning Commission does is send the, what their decision is, send it to City Council, and then City Council gets to weigh in on it and make a decision. The Planning and Zoning Commission could agree to this special planning district. They could deny the special planning district, or they could continue the discussion of the special planning district, which is in fact what they did. And they will next be considering it on May 4th. Their next meeting was supposed to be May 3rd. That happens to be possibly a primary in Ohio, maybe not a primary, depending on what goes on there. But so they moved it to May 4th. There will not be another hearing of the public, an open hearing of the public. There will be a public forum session at that meeting. Final thing that I wanted to say is the Board of Education does have a member on planning and zoning who we recommended and who was appointed by Loveland City. So that's noted in these notes as well. So if you have any questions, let me know, but I just wanted to make sure the board knew that I did that. And then the final issue in my report is the open issues register. That has been somewhat updated. It is on the website. And I believe that Mr. Doherty had something that he wanted to share with us about the open register.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I am hopefully sharing that with everybody right now. So this is the current document. I'm going to, unless there's an objection from the board, we'll post this after tonight. But it's the same document that's been out there on our shared drive for several weeks now. Kathy, are you going to talk about the board purpose statement tonight?
That is in a separate item in the agenda, which will come up
Okay.
after the student representative reports. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. A couple of rows down here, we have legislative liaisons, which are on the agenda as well for tonight. the calendar of expected actions and topics. I know Mike has shared kind of a draft beginning document with us. And as Kathy said, we'll have some further conversation about that down the road. Kathy, I will send you 4 items that we have talked about in meetings in relation to that calendar for potential inclusion in it. I'll do that separately. Planning Commission structure, I will update after tonight to indicate we're going to revisit this in August.
Correct.
And then I think that's everything in terms of updates on the open topics list. If anybody has additions or changes to it, let me know. But otherwise, let me know if anybody has objects, but I'll get this posted right after tonight.
Any questions, comments? Thanks, Kevin. I noticed when I looked at it on the website, it has a little notation at the top. It says this is automatically updated every 5 minutes.
Okay.
Is that true?
I think I thought it was actually more frequently than that, but
Okay, I just had not
I thought it was
seen that
relatively
before,
real
so
time, but
I'd kind of like to sit there and watch it sometime and see what happens at the 5 minutes. Okay,
don't take your
Thanks.
eyes off the screen for very long.
right. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else that board members wanted to add at this point in my report? Seeing nothing, then we'll move ahead to student representative reports. Who's on first? Okay.
Is this working?
It's on.
Okay. All right. It's been an eventful and exciting March so far for grades K through 4. The kindergarten roundup for incoming kindergartners took place a couple weeks ago and was well attended by parents. Parents were able to tour buses, classrooms, common spaces, the cafeteria, and learn more about the LEPTA. Mr. Fancher and Mrs. Foreign attended an NWEA map training in preparation for aligning map test data. LES collected 77 pounds of pull tabs, and 2 third graders took the pull tabs down to Ronald McDonald House for the donation. Grades K through 4 are excited to start having volunteers back after spring break. And this will allow for chaperones for field trips, gardening, and other exciting learning opportunities to take place for the students. The LEPTA announced that they will be donating funds to LECC, LPS, LES, yeah, just those 3, sorry, to support building initiatives. LPS will use the funds for a career day and a math maniac assembly. Both LPS and LES will use the donations for campus beautification and to go on field trips for the first time since COVID started. K through 4 will also use these funds to treat students to Kona Ice on the final day of school. Mrs. Foreign recently participated in the teacher candidate mock interview program at Miami University. LES teachers continue to meet monthly with gifted coordinator Jamie Jackson in order to strengthen the instructional delivery to the gifted learners. Finally, I'd like to shout out my own junior classmates for their great work on the ACT. I know I'm stealing from Nicole. All juniors took the test, the state required ACT, March 1st, and we got our scores back yesterday. So I wanted to thank Mrs. Mason, one of our school counselors, for organizing an event, and to all teachers who reviewed ACT questions with us prior to the test.
Nice. Okay, I'm presenting for LIS, LMS, and LHS. So at LIS, they had for the first time a combined show. A couple students from both LMS and LHS had fantastic experiences demonstrating their instruments to upcoming musicians. I believe you select going into 6th grade. And I did have a friend who was very excited about the raffle basket that she won at this event. So supporting college and career readiness exploration on March 9th, several 8th grade students attended Junior Achieve Aspire to Higher Career Fair. And our students were great ambassadors to LMS and came back with many new insights into the world of the workplace. And our middle school and our high school students are presenting Courage 3.0 and the Student of the Year fundraising. So this is a team that our high school hosts, I think for the past few years, supporting the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society Student of the Year campaign. So our team this year has a goal of raising $50,000 in the next 7 weeks. So please come out and support our students in their mission. There are dine out nights, there is a walk this weekend, and it's really a wonderful cause. In terms of our winter athletics, our girls basketball season finished with a combined overall record of 27, and our boys finished with a combined overall record of 51-29. Our wrestling team finished 3rd overall and had 13 top 5 finishers, with 4 of them being champs. We also had 2 district champs, a 3rd placer at districts, and a district's alternate. Spring sports are up and running. We have great numbers for track and field, boys tennis. The track teams have 3 home track and fields meet this year, and our boys tennis will play their home matches at Normandy. We have Science Day coming up on March 24th, as well as the LIS Hoops for Heart and LMS Student of the Year Pep Assembly, and an LIS LMS outdoor musical concert on May 7th. For the high school, we've also had a very successful winter sports season, and congratulations to all of our student athletes. We'd like to congratulate team 10464 Bionic Tigers, who won the Inspire Award at the Kentucky State Tournament Saturday and have qualified for FTC Worlds in Houston, April 19th to 23rd. Our Loveland Show Choirs, Allure and by Request, continued their successes at Ross Legacy Championships, Lebanon Show Choir Classic, and Fairfield Crystal Classic. I know that By Request has broken Loveland Show Choir records this year, so congratulations to them. Loveland Show Choirs will also be traveling to Nashville, Tennessee in the Show Choir Grand National at Grand Ole Opry on Thursday, 24th. We had Impact Night in downtown Loveland to support our local businesses. This was led by Tiger Inc., and our students were very proud of how the community came to support. So thank you to everyone who was there. Next up is Breakfast with Bots on April 9th to support our robotics team, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And this week is actually Hope Week at our high school. So our Loveland Hope Squad organizes a week full of different activities for our students. So we've had dress up days, we have some wonderful raffle baskets, recesses during lunch, and more. And if you're ever going to visit the high school, tomorrow is the day because we have therapy dogs coming in.
And it's Hawaiian shirt day. It is. Yeah.
There we go.
I got mine picked out. Yeah.
Okay, so if
Waiting for
anyone
that all
goes
week.
to see the therapy dogs, they should come dressed in a Hawaiian shirt.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I did have a student that requested that our adapted PE program be shouted out. So they hosted a Special Olympics figure skating inspired performance in the gym. And my class went to watch. It was a really wonderful experience, and they wanted to thank everyone involved for the opportunity involved with special education. And finally, this was the point that Austin stole, but our students participated in Exploration Wednesday, I think. Exploration Wednesday. So our freshmen heard from Speak Love and Hope Squad members, sophomores and juniors participating like ACT test, pre-ACT, and our results came out yesterday. So congratulations again. And seniors did career mentoring at Oasis.
Very good. Any questions for Nicole or Austin?
Did you include the Little Shop of Horrors? Is that
No, I didn't, but our Little Shop of Horrors is when?
April 20th to 23rd?
That'll be fantastic. I've heard good things.
Yeah.
Anything else? Busy as usual, yeah. But thank you for bringing all those things to board attention and therefore to our audience and to our online audience as well.
And
Great.
now into the 4th quarter, the home stretch.
The home stretch. okay.
Almost there.
And it's spring, so, you know, it's all good, right? Thank you very much. Same kind of report to you. We do have several items on the agenda this. So if you do need to leave and go find a Hawaiian shirt, that's perfectly fine. If you want to stay, we're also glad to have you and have an input that you would have for us. So thank you. Okay, if we're all right, then we'll move from reports to discussion topics. And Mr. Doherty asked about this earlier. The first discussion item is the board purpose statement review. I did request that board members take a look at that board purpose statement. It is on board docs. It is also on the website. It's also on this piece of paper. And on this piece of paper, since I did not hear from any other board members, I took a stab at making a few changes to it. So I will open the floor to discussion about the board purpose statement. Please let me know if you have any comments or thoughts. If you are not prepared to discuss this evening, we can extend it, but if you are ready, this is similar. I believe I sent something like this out by email not long after the March 1st meeting, just to let you know that I was thinking about it, but certainly it's open for discussion.
Kathy, for one, I'm totally fine with the suggested changes that you made.
I will just make a note that basically what I did was add the statement that was on the website. I believe Mr. Setters will back me up. It was on the website before the website change. No one's quite sure where it came from. It did not come from board collaboration. I think there was a point at which the prior website was being established and somebody said, we need something to the board. And so something was written and put on there. I cannot tell you where it came from. The main thing that I saw that it was missing was that the board selects an executive officer, but they do also select a financial officer. We do have 2 hires. We hire a superintendent and treasurer. So I added that into the draft that I did. And then I tried to make it sound a little more active rather than it seemed kind of textbook in what it was. The board kind of does this, and I tried to make it a little more active.
I like your changes.
I also, Mr. Broadwater will be happy to know, the original one says, if anybody has any questions, call the superintendent's office. I did change that to say board members can be reached. I took the superintendent out of there. It said you can reach the district office, but felt that since this was a board purpose statement, people ought to be encouraged to contact board members rather than saying, the board has a purpose, but call the superintendent and see what they're doing.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
If anybody finds any typos, if you find any typos, I'll be extremely embarrassed, nitpicker that I am. But if you are in agreement, we could go ahead and get this onto the website. If you'd rather wait and have a formal resolution about it, we can do that too. Since we didn't have a resolution to get it on there in the first place. Show of hands. If I had just changed this and didn't tell you about it, would you have noticed?
At some point.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. for sure. Yeah. I usually read it nightly.
Do you? Do you? Just to check to see if it gets refreshed every 5 minutes, right?
That gives you a purpose.
That's
Yes.
We
All
can
right.
discuss Oxford commas if you want.
Is there an Oxford comma missing for you? I thought I included all the Oxford commas. If I missed one, let me know, because I do pay attention to the Oxford commas.
Caught me on one, but you were correct. Like, oh, no.
All right, then. Okay, that is all then for the board purpose statement. We'll move to, having referred to the superintendent, we'll move to the superintendent's updates.
Thank you. John, I think I've got a presentation. And as he's pulling that up, first I want to say thank you to our young Boy Scout who has handled himself very well as he's sitting through our, almost number 2. And I believe it's a community badge that you're receiving. Is it Luca? I know you're an LIS student. Lucas? Okay, well, welcome and thank you for hanging in there.
Thank you, Mr. Broadwater. I couldn't see Lucas behind the podium, so I didn't know that he was here. So thank you for pointing him out to us.
You bet. The other thing before I go through is we have been participating. I'm a member of BASA, which is a Superintendent's Association for Ohio. They started a program called Hearts and Souls where they asked us to invite state legislators in. And we have done that. The last couple of weeks, we've been able to have 3 state legislators in. And really the purpose for me was to put a face on the students of Loveland City Schools and a face on our staff and the educators who work tirelessly every single day, and let the state legislators know that their decisions make a difference. They make a difference in our kids' lives and our community's lives, and to share the great things that are happening here in Loveland. We've got a lot of great things going on. When you look at our student representatives, they obviously share a lot of that. And really it's to establish and enhance a relationship with those state legislators. And along with that, we had Representative Jessica Miranda went to our elementary school, and we gave her a tour, and we were able to kind of have a discussion about state funding and what our thoughts are, and give her some documents in regards to specifically to Loveland and our thoughts on how the state maybe could support the community in regards to state finance. Representative Tom Brinkman was in at the high school yesterday. He spoke with Mr. Vanatsky and Mr. Warden's classes. I believe we had government, AP government. The kids were in there and they gave him some tough questions, and he was okay with that. But we enjoyed both of those visits. Today, Congressman Steve Shabbat was in at our middle school. He spoke with social studies students, history students over at the next room, and those students had very good questions. We were able to tour, go to an ELA classroom, and then finish up in the band room, and really, again, just establish a relationship as we move forward. So I want to say thank you to those three individuals, and I know we've been in contact with Congressman Wenstrup's office as well, and trying to figure out how we can schedule them in. But again, I think it's important just to set up a relationship as we move forward, and also give some state funding thoughts out of Loveland. So with that, what I thought I would do this evening, we said when we started the strategic vision process that we would keep the board up to date. So I will attempt to do that. And I believe it's on. Are you doing it, John? Okay. All right. So I've got a kind of kept the timeline. Andrea Connor's done a very good job, and she manages all of this. And we've kind of lined through things that we have got through. I'm a big fan of being able to do that. If you remember February 9th, we had 2 community meetings, one at 5:30 and then one at 6:30. And in between we had the showcase. That was very well attended. February 15th, we did update the board. On February 23rd, we had our second community meeting. That was in the cafeteria, where we set up the 4 different stations and had Portrait of a Tiger feedback. And with that feedback, we were able to develop a new language and a kind of a new form of what we want to see, aspirations we want to see for our kids. And then as you move into March and back to March, as you move into March, on Tuesday, March 1st, we had a work session where we again updated the board. On March 7th, we did a virtual check-in, our team in central office, with Colin Lewis, who is the individual from Battelle for Kids, who is leading the process with us. We made sure that we checked in with him to see what he needed. And then March 10th was our first design team meeting. The location was in the cafeteria here at LIS LMS. We performed a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, obstacles, and threats. And we were able to do that with everybody in attendance. They were able to do that online. We also kept it open because sometimes you'll get technical glitches. And so that was open. I'm excited to see what that is. We've gotten the responses, and we're going to see how that forms where the strategic vision is going. Tonight is the 22nd. So again, we're giving you an update. And from there in April 14th is our next design team meeting. And this is one we're going to kind of get a little bit more meat on the bones, where we're going to look at that SWOT data. But what I have not seen yet is we did do student surveys, optional. Parents could opt out if they wanted to. We did a system self-assessment. So all of us in the district participated. I am not going to see those results until Colin leads us. So it's going to be very interesting to see where that's going to take us as we move in to the second meeting and forward. And then on April 19th, we will start with the writing team. What that is, Group 1 writing team. I believe we have 12 members. It's staff members, teachers. It's anybody in our OPSI group that's been selected, administrators. We're going to take everything that the design team on April 14th put together, and we're going to start writing what the actual focus areas are going to be. And that's a smaller group simply because you can't do that with a large group. And then we will have a second writing team, which is April 27th. That I believe is 5 members because that's going to be the LECC, LPS, LES, that's correct. And so we will do that for the group 2. And then as we move into May 3rd, we've got the work session, which I'll review. May 11th, group 1 is going to continue writing. May 12th, group 2 will continue writing. May 16th, we are going to have community meeting number 3, which if you recall, the community meetings are different than the design team. Community meetings, anybody in the community can come in and kind of give us some constructive criticism as the direction that we're going. And then May 17th, we'll report out to that. May 18th is design team meeting number 3, where we really are hoping to take what the writing team has done, put it in a format such that we've got the vision pretty much ready to go. And then Wednesday, we're still looking at confirming this date and tentative change. June 6th, we did change the date to June 6th. So it'll be June 6th, where we'll look to the board to confirm the strategic vision and move forward. And we'll also have a gallery walk where we'll print it off on some big boards so everybody can take a look at it and just walk through. And that way they've got an idea of which direction we're going. So by June, that is where we would like to be. Hopefully that is where we would be. And I would ask Mr. Eilert wasn't intended in attendance for the first meeting. I had said in our board update the last 2 weeks, to me, it was a very positive experience. I thought everybody did a great job of keeping it student-centered. Colin Lewis did a very good job. It's a tough job to get 100 people back on board every 5 minutes, trying to bring them back in. The beauty and the design of it was initially I had thought I would lead this, and then having been in Loveland for a few months, the thought was I would like to be able to participate in these groups, and I thought it worked very well. I was able to get around. I think there were a couple of groups I didn't get to, but I was able to get around all the groups, and all the groups asked me some pretty difficult questions, and that's okay. But it was good conversation. It was respectful conversation. It was about kids, and this community does care about their schools. They do care about their kids. It's just differing views and narrowing it down to what is our focus for our kids for the next 5 years. So I look forward to the second meeting. I look forward to seeing what the data is, especially from our kids. It's always interesting when they're able to do it anonymously, they can come out and get after us a little bit and show us where we need to be moving forward. But Reverend Eilert, I don't know if you want to add anything since you were there.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I thought it was a very positive meeting. I heard lots of positive comments from others as well, and trying to talk to folks that I know come from different viewpoints and so forth, and everyone felt they had the opportunity to share their concerns and do so in a productive way. And yeah, there was definitely a good spirit in the room, and Colin was an excellent facilitator. I'm really glad that he's the one that's going to be leading the process. He does a great job of balancing humor, but insight and being serious about the important things. And so I think it was a really good evening. One concern I have just personally, I can't be at the April 14th meeting. Falls during Holy Week. We have a service that night that I'm already committed to being a part of. So I don't know if there's another board member that's interested, willing to be there on the 14th, to have, a board representative there for that session.
Thank you.
We can decide that later.
Kevin can be there.
Kevin? Are you saying anything? No. You're muted.
Well, I will finish up with my last slide.
I've got a little bit of feedback here, so. You're, Kevin, we'll just let you know that we were getting some feedback. So at the moment you have been muted executively. We'll see if we can figure out what's going on with that. But
So the
Okay.
last slide I had up there was the week ending of March 13th, 2022. There were 0 reported COVID-19 cases. The Hamilton County Public Health Guidelines no longer require schools to provide weekly summary of COVID cases unless testing is conducted in the school. Consequently, the dashboard is no longer on the website, and we are taking a deep breath, and we're bringing volunteers in after spring break, and we're ready to go. And we still monitor student attendance, and we still meet with Hamilton County officials, not as regularly, but we do have conversations because obviously the world, there are still some things out there. So with that, I will
Well, you
be
will,
done.
well, that's good news. Obviously, we can probably all state that if we need to go back to any of those requirements, obviously we will. We'll keep an eye on what's going on, but it does feel really good to take a deep breath right now. I imagine, especially for everybody who's been in the buildings every day. Feels very good at this moment.
It does.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Broadwater? Then we'll move to some board resolution, well, some resolutions, lots of resolutions. The first two, 5.1 and 5.2 have already been mentioned. And so I would ask for a motion to approve being a reader resource adoption.
Kathy, do we, apologize. Do Andrea and John need to give their reports or we just take-
Andrea will not need to give a report. What I thought we would do is we make the motions, and then Andrea can talk to us as part of the discussion. Is that all right?
I just talking about the teaching and learning board report of the business.
No, those are normally on board docs just for us to read, to be prepared for the items. But Andrea, I think, mentioned that she has some specific information that she'll share with us about each of these items if we're ready for it.
No problem, sorry.
That's okay. Is there a motion to approve the being a reader resource? Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second? Reverend Eilert seconded. Now, discussion. Andrea, do you have anything to add? You did mention there is a piece posted both under being a reader and the mathematics resource, but it does have information about both of those in that.
Right. So what you will notice if you look at both 5.1 and 5.2, it's the same document linked into both because it references both of the pieces of the resource adoption. So the first one for being a reader, remember that I mentioned that the piloting material was purchased from a grant. So the price that you see listed, that is for the purchase for the additional teachers that were not part of the pilot. I also wanted to let you know that this is for the kits and the digital access. So when Ms. Kinney was presenting, she talked a lot about the Learning Hub and all the resources that are available for staff, as well as those videos for training. Hold on.
Wait, say that again. You're saying that if you turn off the feedback from Mr. Doherty's connection, it also turns off the sound for the whole meeting to the community. Is there any way that you can turn the volume down on that feedback? Or would that also turn our volume down?
Can we? Kevin, are you unmuted? I can't, but we can't hear you. Can you talk? Okay. Can you turn him back on? If you, but do that.
Can you talk now, Kevin?
We can't hear you no matter what.
We can't hear you.
All we've got is.
We can read your lips. Sounds like. Would it be possible for Mr. Doherty to call in and listen?
You can hear us. We could just-
Can you move him into the audience?
The problem, Kevin, I know you can hear us. The problem Mr. Ames is saying is if he mutes the feedback that we're getting, what we're hearing is I. And he says that if he mutes that, he believes he's also muting all of the sound for this meeting, for the online audience, and probably for the recording. Apologize for the pause, but we're trying to make sure that we. I'm not doing anything.
Lucas, could you help us out?
He did that. Just kick him out of the meeting.
Take him out of the meeting. Okay. Do we still have the sound when he was out of the meeting? No, it went away as soon as he went out. Kick him out and then why doesn't he restart his computer?
It is on his end.
Why doesn't he log? Kevin, can you log off and restart your computer then?
Okay, somehow it did mute him. I muted him, so he's now. We're back on.
Hey, Lucas.
Good job, Lucas.
Okay, so am I correct in understanding that we now do not have the feedback from Mr. Doherty and that we are also still broadcasting our audio?
My bright idea would be for Kevin to reboot his computer to see if he can get rid of that loop.
Can Kevin hear us now?
You did good as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, he went muted again. Go ahead and try it.
All right.
But you believe that we are being heard? Kevin, can you hear us speaking? Now we have a reverberation. Oh.
Well, he's unmuted again though, somehow.
Okay.
We're being heard.
Okay, all right, we'll keep going. And then we'll just have to deal with the I if Kevin needs to talk. Is that correct?
No, because
Okay.
even when he talked, we couldn't.
Oh, okay.
He'll have to do a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah.
He might need to send a message if there's something he needs to. Okay, Kevin, did you hear that? We're suggesting that you restart your computer.
So the only thing I wanted to add is that the being a reader is going to be covered under the PI funds. So I just wanted to make that note. That is also on that document. Yeah.
And Andrea, do you have a projection? It sounds like the last program went on for more than a decade.
Yeah.
It's obviously impossible to say with any certainty how this will work out or what will happen next year.
Right.
Do you have an anticipation of how long this program will last and what the cost is in ongoing fashion? Is this a one-time cost?
So this is a one-time cost. So as I said, all this comes in a kit. If the program goes through any sort of revision, the vendor will reach out and we're providing X number of texts. Sometimes in the purchase, it will allow for that flexibility to, last over a certain amount of years. I will tell you that this particular program, because it is new, as Ms. Kinney was pointing out, it just came out, this version. I anticipate this would be valid for quite some time. So as you notice, like when I first showed up in Loveland, the first thing that I heard from our K-2 teachers was, we need to update our reading program. We need to update our reading program. And so we just felt like we were at the right time to do that, since we had we basically had done all that work prior to COVID with the being writer. So this felt like a natural progression.
And then I know you haven't quite got in here yet, but I'll just roll it
Mhm.
to tee up for the next question. How does that fit into the math resource adoption?
Yeah, so the math resource adoption, same thing. It is also pulled from the PI fund for this year. Mr. Giffray and Mr. Ames and I are talking about maybe changing that a bit moving forward. But the math resource adoption is a 6-year license for the digital piece, as well as the workbooks that would come for the students to have the paper copies.
And then, and I'm completely unaware of this, but do we have a yearly budget for learning expenses? And then how does this fit into that budget? For instance, if a 5th grade math program runs $46,000 for 6 years, what's a 5th grade English program and a 4th grade math
Right.
program and a 4th grade English program?
So everything is on a cycle. And what we do is when that cycle comes to the end and you have to renew the digital piece, that's part of what we budget into our budgets every spring to make sure that those resources are covered. Right now, we've been pulling it from PI though.
And that's a little bit of what I was getting at, is just, I'm not aware from looking at the budgeting process in the past that we have a comprehensive strategy for digital licenses over all of the grades. And as we're clearly moving in that direction, I anticipate that getting expensive, as books were always much more expensive than digital licenses, but lasted as long as we cared to use. We get a little beholden to the companies when we're purchasing time limited license.
Right.
And that could get very expensive very fast.
Yeah.
More of an observation than anything else.
Yeah. We also have a digital software, an academic software licensure budget that we pull some of our yearly licenses from. So some of the things like Blackboard, some of our learning management systems, those come from that digital software budget. And then Mr. Ames and I work together to try to strategically plan out a lot of these core resource adoption pieces currently through PI, but with Mr. Giffray's help, we're going to be looking at budgeting that a little bit differently for next year.
Great, thanks.
Is part of the cost differentiation between, I know she mentioned that the Being a Reader is a nonprofit resource versus, I'm assuming Savas is a for-profit company. Is that part of the differentiation, you think? Because I'm just like 3 grades versus, or math versus, trying to understand part of the.
So the math, it's 1 grade level, and that's also with the digital component with it. The K through 2, they're actual physical kits that have, printed materials in them, the actual, anchor text, the books that the teachers will use to do the work. There is a digital component, but it's not a student digital component. So that is why you see that difference.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, then the current item is to approve the Being a Reader resource adoption. So are we ready to vote? Mr. Giffray.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Adler,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
and Dr. Schwetzner.
Yes.
motion carried. The next item, and I'll make the motion to approve the grade 5 mathematics resource adoption. Is there a second? Dr. Swetchnow. Any additional questions on the mathematics? We talked about some of that. Mrs. Connor, did you have anything else to add on the math? I think we covered.
I feel like we covered it. I think some of the questions Dr. Swetchnow and Reverend Eiler mentioned covered it.
Anything else on the math? All right, then can we?
Oh, one additional question on. They talked about the fact that now the new program, this was moving our 5th graders to what we were already doing 6 through 8. And certainly it makes sense in terms of building differentiation for us, but are we going to be exploring that in future years, doing pilot for fourth grade, third? Are they happy?
Yeah, I feel like our, all of our testing data right now is showing that our elementary math scores are very high. I like to try to tie in the measures and the pieces that we see come out of state testing, especially for that third and fourth grade. I feel like right now our math teachers at those levels are basically saying to me, yeah, we want to renew this and not look at new things. There, of course, is a cost to renewing the digital piece, but a lot of those core pieces they've already purchased and they have in their hands. But what we do is we used to be on a regular curriculum cycle. What we're doing now, since we're being super cautious and we're making sure that we've caught up on everything with all of our updating that has taken place over the last 5 to 6 years, is that we're waiting till things renew. And then many of our teachers are ready to just to roll over the same program and not look at or piloting anything new. So I kind of wait in my check-ins with the teachers to have those conversations to see where they feel that we need to align.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Gifford, vote on that.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzino.
Yes.
Mr. Daugherty.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
And Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. The next motion, I will also move to appoint Reverend Eilert as OSBA Legislative Representative and Mrs. Washburn as OSBA Student Achievement Representative. Is there a second?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow seconded. Any discussion? Any objections?
That was so cash.
Vote quickly.
Mr. Doherty,
Oh.
did you have a,
I said vote quickly.
vote quickly. Mr. Gifford, can we vote
Dr.
on that?
Lorenz.
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzino.
Yes.
Mr. Daugherty.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
And Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion
They put us
carried.
last on intentionally there.
Motion carried. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being willing to serve in those positions. The next resolution is to approve field trip for Loveland Robotics team to First World's Robotics competition, and that is in. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moved. Is there a second?
Second.
And Dr. Swetchenow seconded. That is very exciting, and it's nice to have these kinds of resolutions to approve. Any questions or discussion?
Good luck to the team.
Yes. All right, Mr. Gifford.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzino.
Yes.
Mr. Daugherty.
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
And Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, motion carried. Now we come into several resolutions that Mr. Ames is looking forward to. He does have he did have a business manager report back in the administrator reports that covered all of these, but now we have all of the items authorizing all those things that were listed there. And we do, I'm pretty sure, have to do all of these separately because they all have a lot of whereases.
Yes.
I will not be reading all the whereases, but they are all up on board docs. So I would first ask for a motion to authorize participation in a cooperative purchasing program and authorize the award of a contract for a roofing project.
So moved.
Dr. Swetchenow moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Reverend Eilert seconded before you did, Mr. Doherty, but we'll get you on the next one. And so again, Mr. Ames has reported on this. Are there questions or do you have additional information? Mr. Ames?
Yes, I have some additional information. The question came up about how these cooperative purchasing events work, how it takes place. So the companies such as WTI, they bid nationwide their products, not their services of labor, but their products, delivery of the product, the warranties, all of everything having to do with the project except for the labor. So that is nationally bid, and then those prices are all fixed based on square feet. And then they go out and find installers, contractors that do the actual work. So on this one, we had 3 different companies, Imbus Roofing, A.W. Farrell, and William Kramer. Those are longstanding companies that have done work for us forever. And Imbus Roofing was the low bid. So they brought that forward to us. And where the savings is for us is that the contractor does not get any markup on the product itself. Typically, a contractor would mark up the product 25%, 30% to cover their costs of the purchasing of it, the transportation of it, the mobilization of it, and all of those different items. And that is all taken place by Weatherproof Technologies as part of their bid that they made nationwide. So it's to put it very simply, it's kind of like joining Costco or one of those others. You get the benefit of being a member of the group, and you get a little bit better pricing for it. It is a bit different than what a lot of people are used to. Usually we are used to do the open public bidding, and we will still do that on certain projects because there's not very many vendors that are part of those big consortiums. You have to be a pretty big company to be doing that. Paving, we do that locally. So this is just one of those that there is a large vendor out there that is able to do this.
But this is a national vendor, but it will be a local installer.
Yes.
A company that you are familiar with.
Yes.
That will be installing.
Imbus is the company that's doing it. And I believe they've done the last 2, maybe even 3 installations that we've done around the district. So I'm very comfortable with them. As part of the consortium pricing, the vendor being WPT, I'm sorry, Waterproof Technologies. They are the not the general contractor. They are the construction manager. So they manage it. They are out there on site to make sure that it gets done according to the plan because they warrant it. It is their warranty. So if they don't check it and something happens, it all falls back on them in 10, 15 years. And this is a 20-year roof that we're installing. Also on this one, we are doing, and this is for the community, we are doing restorations roofs. We are pretty much out of the business of replacing roof. Replacing a roof means you take it all the way down to building steel and you put all new insulation on it. You put all of the different levels, layers of tar and tarboard. But we are past that. We have good base insulation. They will be adding a little bit additional insulation and just putting a new coating over it. So in essence, we've got a double roof now.
And this is part of the regular schedule that you
Yes.
have for roofs, that the roofs that are being replaced under this contract are due for restoration. No matter what the age of a building, it is time that a roof be taken care of in order to maintain the other parts of the building, the structure of the building. And as you said, it's a 20-year roof on the building.
Yes. So the roofs that we are doing were all put on in 1995. So they've done a good job. They've lasted quite a few years. And they would last another 20 years. And I know questions have been asked about the viability of putting a 20-year roof on an older building. But I would say that if we don't do it correctly, then we may have a failure of a roof, or if we don't do it at all, we would surely have a failure on a roof, which costs significantly more once the water gets into the roof structure or into the building structure, start rusting, start molding. So it's the right thing to do, and whether the building lasts that long or not, it's the right thing to do.
So just to review, this bid, this roughly $500,000 bid involves roughly the entire LES building.
No, this roof is for the wing, the connector wing between the primary and the elementary, which is 15 classrooms. I think 15 classrooms. The special needs classroom on the elementary school, the art room on the elementary school, and the 1995 addition on the elementary cafeteria.
So your estimate would be roughly a third of the total roof on that campus?
A third, no, the primary school, put that one off to the side because that's a whole different thing. But this would be a third of the elementary school if you included the wing. So you could anticipate this much more pretty much every year. And just a piece of information I received a week or two ago is that bids that were let for construction of new schools 2 years ago, they are now finding that the prices are increased by 45%. So construction, and that's going to cause a serious problem for contractors. They're no longer going to be able to bid on big projects because they can't bid today and expect to hold their costs for 2 years. And a number of them that I've talked to have said, we're just getting out of public business, public bidding right now because they just can't take the chance of losing everything they've made. So it's the whole construction industry is going to, for schools, is going to be interesting for the next few years.
I believe Mr. Doherty has a question.
Yes, sir.
So John, we spent a fair amount of time talking about this offline, but there's always going to be the question about whether this makes sense to do. You've addressed that largely, I think. The fact is that the buildings have lasted, what, half a century because you do things like this on a disciplined, sequential basis. And there is no certainty that these buildings will be replaced at any particular point in the future. Even if they did get replaced at a reasonably proximate time, we'd burn off probably at least half of the warranty, I would expect, that we're buying into with this. Would you agree with what I just said or not?
Definitely, very definitely. By the time we put the roof, well, let's say we decided in 4 or 5 years, the district wants to build a new building. By the time you pass a bond issue, you design a building, you build a building, we're out 10 years very easily, if not further. So it depends on what the mood of the district or the community is. Do they want to keep those buildings? But we have, I think, have an obligation to make sure that they are there and protected for the long term.
Right. And the final thing, John, just to bring clarity to the community, again, we talked a lot about this earlier today, but the part of the ORC that allows you to do this essentially enables you to join a purchasing group to consolidate multiple entities' purchasing activity with the assumption that one organization will gain a lot of experience in the marketplace and use the leverage of scale to get the best pricing for all the members. And this is specifically permitted by way of the ORC, correct?
That is correct.
Anything else? All right, are we ready to vote? Mr. Giuffre?
Dr. Swetchna?
Yes.
Reverend Eiler?
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
And Mrs. Washburn?
Motion carried. The next resolution is an authorization to participate in a cooperative purchasing program and authorize the award of a contract for masonry repairs at the Loveland High School auditorium. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
I have Mr. Doherty moving and Dr. Swetchnow seconding. Okay, discussion on this. Anything to add on this? Again, this is the same type of bid and cooperative purchasing. This is specifically the Loveland High School. And is this, did I see, am I remembering correctly? This is auditorium?
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
I know I saw that,
Yes.
but now I can't see it.
High school.
Oh, there it is up in
Yes.
Up on
the,
the subject.
yes, got it.
And I think I found it very interesting after I started working on this, that it is both schools auditorium west wall that is causing issues. So is it sun? Is it the rain that comes out of the way?
So that's western wind.
Yeah, there's something interesting going on because the rest of those buildings are fine. It's just that west wall. So Both of these are just to take care of problems so we don't get water coming into the building eventually.
Okay, and this one's in the amount of $15,951.47. I love these bids when they have, 47 cents. I don't quite understand that. Any questions?
I've seen an active leak in that room before, so I'm
Yes.
sure.
We tried to fix the roof and that was not it. So
Yeah.
it's just trying to find it.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Giuffre.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetchnow,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn.
Motion carried. The next resolution, and I will make the motion to authorize participation in a cooperative purchasing program and authorize the award of a contract for masonry repairs at Loveland Middle School Auditorium. Is there a second?
Second.
Reverend Eilert seconded. I'm assuming that we've discussed this issue enough. We know it's the same west wall, so we're good to go. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Giuffre?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetchnow,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn.
Motion carried. And I will make a note. I just saw this on the vote on that. Mrs. Washburn is missing the N at
I
the end
added
of
a note.
name. So just so when it gets into the minutes, it's there. Thank you. No, on the middle school one. Okay, the next item is a resolution to authorize purchase of school buses. Their motion.
So moved.
So moved.
Dr.
Second.
Switchnow moved. I think Mr. Doherty seconded.
I do believe so.
And Mr. Ames, report on this one.
Yes, before we start talking about this purchase, I put in the history of bus price. I just was astounded at the increase. Back in 2003, the price was $53,900 per bus, and now we're up to $94,879 per bus. But there's been significant changes done over the years. So anyway, this purchase, the state has authorized, has provided $45,000 per bus for the district to upgrade its fleet, and they've done this statewide. So we will only have to pay, instead of the full amount, we will only have to pay $149,000 instead of the $284,000. That doesn't get paid until those buses come in, and currently they're saying buses are 10 to 12 months out. So we may see these for the following school year.
John,
And these
don't
are
represent-
replacement. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Doherty, go ahead.
We're probably going to say the same thing, Kathy. John, these are not incremental to us net, correct?
Correct. These buses will be, typically when they do this, it is for a pollution control issue, and they require us to drill a hole in the engine block. That is not so for this purchase. These three buses will just be used as either sub buses in case something breaks down, or we will start scavenging parts off of them. And eventually they will be scrapped completely. We can't afford to have that many old buses laying around on the lot. So as these come in, we will move these. When the new ones come in, we'll probably move these out just to keep the fleet in good shape.
But we'll be okay for the next 10 to 12 months until these buses come in.
Yes, we're in good shape.
All right.
And John, just off the top of your head, how old is the stock that we're replacing?
There is a 2004 and two 2005s. And those three buses are spares right now. They are not every day on the road.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr.
Ongoing discussion about strategy for high school busing and thinking about that. How does this impact that strategic thinking on high school bus?
We have the vehicles available. Should there be the ability for us to fund and for us to staff, we have the vehicles to do it. Staffing is the big problem right now. I don't know if you noticed, last month we had, I believe, 3 bus drivers resign. And there are more bus drivers resigning continuously because they are going out and finding jobs, doing other things that they are 8-hour jobs, so they're making a full day's pay. And this is going to continue, and you've all heard it from around the country. It's going to continue to be a problem We are just barely able to maintain what we're doing without the high school busing. So I would love to be able to do it, high school busing, but I just don't know if we will be able to staff it if we decide that it's the thing that we need to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Giuffre, can we vote?
Dr. Schwachna,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn. And once again, we got.
Once
another-
again, she needs an N.
Yes, need to add an N.
All right. And the final business manager resolution is to approve the purchase and installation of a public address system for the ESL buildings. And I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Washburn seconded. Mr. Ames?
Along with, we'll talk about this one first. I tried to get 3 vendors in town to bid on this. One of them just said they could not do it. They're either too busy or they just don't have the wherewithal to do the work with enough people. But we did get 2 bids, and this one with American Sound Electronics, they are a well-known company around Cincinnati. They do PAs, they do technology for many, many school districts. And they will be awarded this bid. And hopefully they will be able to get parts in. And again, we won't take the old one out of service and the new one is completely in. It's just everything technology right now is tough to come by.
And this will be an upgrade in safety and communication for
Yes, yes.
getting information to all the different classrooms.
Yes, the building principals with this, the new systems, they can do announcements from their cell phone, inside, outside. They can go to any classroom and make their announcements. They can subdivide it by different areas in the building. Teachers can talk to them through the system. So it's a major, major upgrade. And I believe this is the last, yes, these are the last 2 buildings that we need to work on.
Any questions?
If I may, before you,
Yes.
let me just go ahead with these other items. There were, I believe, 3 other items that were on my report. Just, I don't want to leave it hanging and band bleachers for the high school. Oh, go ahead, do your
How
vote.
about if we vote on this
I'm
and
sorry,
then
I'm
we'll
sorry,
finish
yes.
up your report. Mr. Giuffre?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
and Dr. Schwachna.
Yes.
Motion carried. Now,
Okay,
Mr. Ames.
so the items that typically I have that the board will approve are either items that are publicly bid, are items that are part of a consortium, or are items that are abnormal, are things that you don't normally see. Because I want to make sure that you know that we're doing such as a PA system. It's nothing we typically do. E-rate is one of the items that I've already issued POs for that. And that is money that we get 40% back from the federal government for all the purchases we do. It is very specific items that are purchased, has to be technology items, has to be network items. And as long as we do the way it's supposed to be done, it has to be publicly bid by the state. And then they give us the money after we spend the money. So that's a small item this year. Band bleachers, historically, we have moved the bleachers from the baseball field and the softball field over to the end zone of the high school football field for football season. So the band has bleachers, and then we move them back to the softball and baseball field. That is just not a good way to do it. It's wear and tear on those. So we're going to purchase the band bleachers for the football field. And just a strange little thing, when I got the quote, within a month and a half, the price went up by $1,800 just for the aluminum for those. So I went ahead and placed that order to try and get ahead of the bids, or the price increases. And then the final one is technology. What we do every year, Chromebooks. We're buying Chromebooks for the 5th grade this spring for next school year. Our rotation means that the kids that are coming from 4th grade to 5th grade will not have machines because those machines will be traveling on upwards with the kids. So we have a 1-year Maybe it will continue. We're trying to figure out how the 12th grade, if the machines will still be viable when they graduate, so we can bring them back down. Probably not. So we are buying the 4th grade or the 5th grade units this year, plus a number of spares. So as children in the lower grades start using them, they break them. We don't have to have them wait for them. We will have spares to be able to hand out to them and keep the education going. So that's just one more thing that is on this group, and I'm sure there will be more things next month.
Okay, so those items that you mentioned, the E-rate, the Chromebooks, and the network switches, I think there were 3 things that
Yes.
you mentioned. Those items are in your report. They are itemized as far as the cost to the district. They are not resolutions that need to come before the board to approve those expenditures, but they are expenditures that are accounted for either in the PI budget or in the other budgetary portion of the
Correct.
district.
It's all PI.
It is all PI. Thank you. Okay, anything else for Mr. Ames? Then we'll move to financial reports. Mr. Giuffre, are you all right if we go through item by item, or do you have a preliminary report for us before that?
Item by item is perfectly fine.
Okay, then the first financial item under the treasurer's report would be a motion to accept the financial reports for February 2022, and additional detailed financial information can be accessed on the district treasurer website. So I need a motion to accept the financial reports.
So moved.
Mr. Doherty moved. Did I hear Mrs. Washburn second? Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Giuffre? These are the typical monthly reports. Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on those?
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
and Dr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Motion carried. The next item is donations. I will move that we accept the following donations, and they are listed under the resolution there, 3 different donations. So I'll make that motion. And Mrs. Washburn seconded. Any questions, discussion, any report, Mr. Giuffre? It's pretty self-explanatory.
There is some documentation with regards to the Gene Haas Foundation for the CNC machinist training, very specific in detail. And if they were to reward that again, they would like to see who the beneficiaries have been for the scholarship. Are very specific about how those scholarship checks are distributed on behalf of the student, which goes to the institution with the student in the memo section. And then for registration for any kind of competition or training for the manufacturing technologies.
Great, thank you. And I see that is, sorry, I didn't mention that attached, give an attachment with that information. All right, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Daugherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
and Dr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Next item is that the board accept the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I heard Mrs. Washburn first, so I'm going to give you this second, Mr. Doherty. Is that okay? All right. And that also has an attachment, and again, is a sort of a standard kind of motion, but Mr. Giuffre, any comments on that one?
So this is the second step in the budgetary process for fiscal 23. Can't believe I'm saying that, as it's still fiscal 22, but the budget's the first step. The amounts and rates come from the Budget Commission, which is comprised of the treasurer, the auditor, and the prosecutor of Hamilton County. And the next step in this process would be us reporting to them the unencumbered ending balances. So it is a historic process in this aspect where they look at the assessed valuations of our properties from last year and then determine what those rates will be to make sure that the amounts that we receive are the same as they were in the prior year. So it is a traditionally standard budgetary process.
Any questions? All right, Mr. Giuffre, let's vote on that one.
Mrs. Washburn, Mr. Daugherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes,
Dr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
motion carried. Next item is policy 6423, use of credit cards. Treasurer recommends that the board adopt the updated policy 6423, use of credit cards. And I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Doherty seconded. You'll recall that we had the first reading of this last month, and you will note that attached on the agenda is the draft and then the updated edits version. Are there any questions, comments, discussion? Remember that we are moving from a control to a compliance model for the use of credit cards. All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetchnow,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn.
Motion carried. Final treasurer item is a grievance settlement. The treasurer recommends approving the OPSI grievance settlement with Rhonda Combs. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Switchnow moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Reverend Eilert seconded, and the settlement agreement is attached. Any comments, Mr. Giuffre?
No, I don't believe so.
No questions or discussion? All right, let's vote on that one.
Dr. Schwetchnow,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn.
Listed in it or no?
I believe there is
Last page.
81.
Oh, I missed that page.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Motion carried. Anything else for us this evening, Mr. Giuffre?
No, not tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Move into the Director of Human Resources. And I believe that Mr. Broadwater is handling this evening. Mr. Carlier is not able to be with us.
Correct.
So again, report to us first, or do you want to do us to do each item? Do a motion?
Each item separate would be great.
Okay, so the first item would be to approve the addition of a new supplemental position for the LEA agreement. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Washburn moved and Dr. Swetchenow seconded. This is simply the addition of a varsity competitive cheerleading coach. Is that correct, Mr. Broadwater?
Correct. It was by error was left out of one of the agendas last school year, 2021, 2022. So it was discovered during the most recent supplemental meeting. And so we're making that correction.
Okay, so it is a correction. Any questions? Mr. Giuffre?
Mrs. Washburn, Dr. Schwetchnow,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
and Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, motion carried. And then finally, I will move to approve the resolutions of the Director of Human Resources, including resignations and employment of certified classified homebound substitute and supplemental position for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a second? Mrs. Washburn seconded. Now, Mr. Broadwater, I know that we have attached on board docs, we have those agenda items. Any comments that you would
Yes.
like to make?
I would love to make comments. First of all, just to make sure the board is aware that there are going to be several postings you're going to see before spring break for summer school and Jumpstart, and Connor has discussed that. This Jumpstart summer school positions are all covered by ESSER funds, and Jumpstart positions are covered by Title I funds. And again, Mrs. Connor did speak on that. The other thing I would say is you will see some postings for next year, the season, right? So tomorrow, I believe you'll see some postings. These are not additional FTEs. These are simply replacements of resignations or retirements. If there was ever going to be an additional FTE, we would make sure we point that out to the board. So a couple items under letter A, retirement, resignation, leave of absence. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Steve Fetterman at our intermediate school has been teaching 6th grade science and social studies. He will be retiring effective June 1st of 22. Steve has been an integral part of LIS for over 20 years. He has been a part of Runners Club. He was here when they presented, if you remember, Science Club, Student Council, and has served as a subject area leader. His wife is an art teacher. Both of his kids have gone through Loveland. He is Loveland, and you do not replace Steve Fetterman. Steve Fetterman is just a great educator. He is like the Pied Piper here. The kids love him, and we are certainly going to miss Steve Fetterman here at LIS. The other retirement I would point out, Cindy Rack is retiring. She is at the elementary school, third grade teacher, effective July 1st of 22. Cindy has been a leader and a grade level coordinator for years and is just a great educator. She has grandchildren. When I talk to Cindy, she still has a passion to teach, but her passion for her grandchildren, I believe, is larger. So she is looking forward to spending time with her grandchildren. And I just want to say thank you to Cindy as well as Steve for all the years that they have given us, and hope they enjoy the retirement. The other item I would point out, as you recall, item D, employment of administrative staff for the 2022-2023 school year. We have been talking to the Board of Education for quite a few months about the need for a coordinator of technology and innovation. Good example was this evening when we heard the letter I quite a bit, but it is very important that as
That
we,
was a phonics lesson, right? That was just phonics.
yeah, it was buying a vowel, that's for sure. But we are very excited. We went through a process, it was a rigorous process. We had very good candidates. The coordinator of technology and innovation, as you recall, it is not an additional FTE. It is moving by attrition, just using our FTE count in a different way. This position will directly report to our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, as well as work in conjunction with John Ames, our business manager, excuse me, when it comes to purchasing. So with that, I would like to introduce our candidate who we are excited to have. Adam Samuels is here.
Thank you.
And Adam is a Loveland resident. He and his wife have a young daughter. And Adam, I do not have a badge to offer you like Lucas, but I do let you be a Loveland Tiger. So we're excited to have you, and thank you for hanging in here. So thank you. With that, so ends the report unless you have questions.
I have a question. Is Mr. Ames going to have Adam run the meeting next time?
This is a perfect example of what you've gotten yourself into.
Yeah.
And I do know what you mean about not, some people are not replaceable. Over the years, we've had many people who have worked here in Loveland, and it's been hard to imagine replacing them, but they certainly do deserve to retire.
They do.
And so I do hope we get to celebrate retirements this year. We haven't been able to for quite some time. We haven't had our retirement cookies, and I think it's time that we come back to a.
We've talked about it. We know you want the cookies, so we're gonna make it happen. But now we
I
want to.
really want to, what has been a tradition here has been board members fighting over who gets to hand whose plaque to whom.
Right.
So, we do appreciate the folks who have spent a lot of time here with us
Sure.
and
Yeah, we will be planning something.
to celebrate. I think Mr. Doherty has his hand up.
Yeah, Mike, just one quick question. I don't know if I don't need this down to the dollar or whatever, but in terms of net financial impact of these changes, particularly with the administrative staff section, how do you think we fare?
I can tell you that it would be, and this is going to be an estimate, looking at the two salaries and benefits, I would venture to guess it may be an additional $10,000 at most. I don't
Okay.
have the exact number, but that gives you kind of a ballpark.
Okay, that does it for me. Thank you.
But I'll pile in and just point out that we did a lot of hard work with the negotiation and the new teacher schedule. We have resignation of two very senior staff members, and they'll be replaced presumably with significantly less expensive employees.
Yeah, the direction we've given our building administrators is really to find 0 or 1 year's experience. Now, obviously, when you get into some other areas like your special education or physics, sometimes that's not feasible, but what we want to do is make sure that, yes, we do capture those dollars as much as possible. Absolutely.
And to point out as well that as we built that schedule, we maintained Loveland's position as a destination where teachers want to come.
Yes.
It was hard work, so I just want to say it again.
Anything
Call
else?
out, Eric.
I was just gonna say that for anybody out there in the non-educational, that looks like a lot of resignations or retirees or positions, but like Mike said, it's that time of year and you're gonna see it popping up in all districts.
I think the beauty is like Eric was saying, they did put a lot of hard work to the negotiations, but we are a destination district. We normally do not have issues finding candidates, and Adam's position's a perfect example. We had many qualified candidates to come in and be a part of Loveland.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn. Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler,
Yes.
and Dr. Schwetzino.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Dr. Lorenz, if I may, I'd like to acquiesce to Lucas for this last vote, if I may.
Oh, let him keep track of
I
it?
think
That
that,
would be great.
would you like to
That'd be
come take
wonderful.
this chair, young man?
We're just really putting him to work
I've
tonight.
I've written the magic words right here. This is what everyone wants to hear you say after that first and second right here.
Okay, so what we
One at a
need for Lucas is a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Swetchenow moved.
One right
Is
there.
there a second?
Second.
And Reverend Eilert seconded,
Two.
and it's not
Can you
discussable
read that?
according to Roberts.
Tell 'em what's
So
about.
can we vote on that, Lucas?
All in favor, say A.
Aye.
Aye.
I turn it on, Mr. James.
Hey, what time?
We have adjourned the meeting at 8:30.
Write that down. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank
Thanks.
you, Mr. Frey.